People are still trickling in. I guess we can give it a few more minutes. We have a light agenda anyway.
Jeffrey, it's 3 over. Let's start probably.
Okay.
We'll sync up with Jim afterwards.
Yeah. Do you want to run it?
Shall I do the sites? Okay, welcome everyone to Rift at IETF 116. We've got light agenda, so let us tell you what we are going to do. Not well, if you are participating in IETF, you better know what it is, what happens to your work. Please read it if you are unfamiliar. A couple of reminders. Please wear the mask in the meeting room. Please be cautious and professional. And please check in even if you don't speak, so we know you are in. And if you are having questions or anything, please raise your hand on the tool. So quick update from the chairs, and then we'll have Tony talking about spec updates and KV registry. And then we'll talk about rechartering. So pending AD review, base specification, great work going on, really many very good interactions. So applicability state and Young model are still pending review, active work, KV registry, probably we are ready for AD to review it. Auto VPN is progressing great, auto fluid reflection still needs some work. We've got a individual draft, which is the Rift in leaf rings. and RIFTs are multicast on site. Now we would like to give them more focus after base specification has been published. So new proposed charter, which will go to ISG for agreement. So we have finished the following items we discussed just. So the base spec, YAML model, applicability statement.
Sorry, this we'll discuss this at end. So the next
Yep.
agenda item is the base spec update.
And we will extend new charter with new work. So this is pretty much it. And Tony, all yours.
Yeah. Where do I stand? Because they put the mic on the cross.
You have to stand on that mark.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. So base specters. So Jordan is doing most of the work. I'm kind of kind of consulting with him mostly, and Alvaro was basically finishing the AD review. Next one, please. With version 17. All right. So between me not watching as an editor and my mildly sloppy chairs, we forgot to get a temporary assignment for multicast address. So meanwhile, somebody took it. So we have been pushed off, which means that the final version we're running on 121 in IPv4 and not 120. The V6 was still available, which is very important, because if you ever worked on the 8 segment displays, you know why it's an A1 F7, or otherwise try it and you'll see. All right, so now we have the reservation by Aena. There was a very good comment from Alvaro that we did not write pseudocode or strictly specify the tie ordering algorithm, which is very important for the tie comparison. It was kind of obvious, but non-obvious. So that has been included. Then we had some discussion what the FSMs and the normative statements really mean, and that has been carefully reworded that an implementation must comply in terms of external behavior to an implementation of those FSMs and normative procedures. It's important difference from saying that an implementation must implement the FSMs, which means that if you test the protocol, you cannot test whether there's an FSM inside that runs in those states, but external behavior must be 100% compatible or equivalent to if you'd implemented those FSMs and procedures. Okay, next one. All right, and then the schema, there was a bunch of constants. So we basically killed the constant appendix and everything went into the schema. Mean tie ID, max tie ID. It was specified, but it was basically all over the spec, partially in appendix, so it went into the schema. An important normative change was that we didn't specify what happens if a v4 forwarding is supported on the interface, precisely what is supposed to happen on the lice when you send that. So that has been clarified, that you must set the IPv4 forwarding capable on all the lice that you're sending out. And it wasn't clear that if you receive a tie with an undefined level, that you must discard it, because the lice with undefined levels serve a purpose, right, for the ZTP. You tear down the ZTP that way, or you can actually derive things like miscabling, even if the level is undefined. Okay, next one. All right, couple of clarification. Yeah, there was a good catch by Alvaro. We didn't say, there was this like MTU mismatch detection. And if the schema is clear, it's an optional item. And it says if it's optional, if it's not present equal a default. But we didn't put it into the text. So it wasn't clear what happens if people don't advertise it. So the clause has been carefully extended to cover all the cases. So there was this implementation feedback from Nokia, right, that the multicast is kind of tricky on certain platforms, especially on the virtualization, and they implemented the broadcast support, and the spec has been extended to say, well, you can send and broadcast. It's obviously a bigger security hole. But we didn't add it to the security section. But it's all pretty much Alvaro sketches. Then also Alvaro tightened language in many places. The distance metric cost in terminology wasn't, completely clear. Reason being, I didn't want to go too, obsessive about the stuff and really use the proper mathematical terms, because topology in mathematics is very precise definition of those terms, but they're very counterintuitive the way we use them. So it was a little bit loose how routing uses it. So that has been tightened. And then Jordan looked at actually how much stuff we changed with all the other catches, and 2,500 changes. So, I tried to make it quick. I have about 700 PowerPoints, which should be done before midnight. But it's all grammar, textual, better wording, nothing normative. Cutting out comparison to existing technology, couple of things like that, some language, which, the new RFCs, we are all equal, kind of things. Yeah, that's it. Is next one. Yeah, and then for the applicability draft authors, because there was some discussions, so I assume people got it that I don't have 800 PowerPoints with all the changes, right? But yeah, the diff is large, and thanks, Alvaro is really nitpicked the stuff at very high quality. So a couple of things at the end were basically arguing back and forth, which is a part of the base specs, right? Because the stuff sends a lot of things, and it says, well, allows you to do all kind of miscabling detection, but it doesn't really say what the miscabling detection are, right? Like the MTU is kind of clear, but the spec is not normative in any sense. Like you must look at this and say, oh, it doesn't match up. Like, instance or, instance IDs in there, things like that, which are very helpful in deployment, but they are not normative because it's optional whether you implement the stuff, and you can implement, clauses that loosen the stuff. So let's say here's a simple example. If you have, the subnet checking on both sides, which is very common, ISIs, those protocols all do it. It's a very important thing. But there are lots of cases where the subnets don't match and you still forward. So you need to know to loosen this clause. You cannot really make it normative. You have to start to dance all around these things. And the discussion went back and forth, and those things belong really in applicability draft, right? Like how do you deploy the stuff? Deployment guide. Because those are like the use of, should you use 1 or 255? There's a pro and con for both, right? The 255 spec is kind of like 255 is the best, but a lot of the stuff is being done on 1 because you cannot lose it, and especially as a multicaster, the stuff runs away from you. So that's a feedback to the applicability draft authors that we need to cover that stuff and put it in, right? So it's partially a mild implementation guide and a deployment guide as well. So Jordan will poke the authors. Jordan is actually on the flight. His youngest child has the first birthday, so he had to make it back. All right, next one. I think that's the last one, right? Yeah, so I think Alvaro is through the spec, and generously he declared himself, underemployed now, without the AD position, so he will be continuing through the process, after the new AD takes over. So thanks a lot, Alvaro. I know it's probably one of the largest specs that you had to suffer through. Yeah, we hope to entertain, We aim to please, but there is only so much we can do.
Alvaro Tana routing AD. Suffer is the key word, I think, here. And you've done a really good job in meeting that. Yeah, so Jim is taking over tomorrow.
I've seen him. He said he won't make it into this session.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Jim is taking over tomorrow, right, for the working group. And yeah, what I told him is I will keep looking at this little by little until he catches up, right? so that, there's a more graceful handover and not just, give him the stuff and go away.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's it. Thanks.
Yeah, he looked properly scared. I think he had a look at the spec, yes. All right, and yeah, I don't know. Did we talk last IETF? We have another implementation actually. The free router guys cranked out implementation and we hooked the stuff up, and again there was like 0 defects. But it was in the full spec implemented, so like the initial machines flooding and so on. I don't think he did disaggregation yet and so on. So it's a Java implementation. I didn't look at the code. Somebody looked and said like, yeah, it looks relatively nice. The Python version is up to 16. I pulled it up with Bruno. There was no surprises. Stuff just, we just ran the test. Stuff came up. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, the key value registry is now where more of the action is, because we start to build more and more technologies. When I say we, I mean now, no, Juniper mostly, because the other folks are talking about it, but I didn't see anyone cranking out the auto EVPN or, this auto flood reflection yet. There were some talks about extending the Bruno stuff, but I don't know whether the parties got to it. And, the key value registry now starts to, show its value, right? So there is action there. More and more schema elements, and we have some implementation feedback why we extended the draft. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think that's it, and there will be just key value, and you're free for the rest of the night.
Thanks, Tony. Any questions? Okay.
Right, so those are the updates on the key value registry. I don't know why we didn't update the auto flood reflection. There was a good amount of work, I think, going on there. So again, Jordan is kind of driving the draft and the schemas, and mostly like hacking code and architecture and whatever, fighting deployment, coming back with things. Next one, please. All right, so the node bank key value is kind of trivial. Stuff works as advertised. We see, no problems. Use it for all kind of different purposes. The south key value, we started to use that quite extensively for different purposes, and the spec didn't need any changes. But the tricky part is during deployment that there's a tie breaking of the southbound key value. And if you have technologies where the same key value is being advertised by multiple top of fabric, let's say, right, for redundancy purposes, you may come into split range scenarios, right? And you have to watch that. If both of them are advertising, different values, ultimately tie breaking makes sure that everybody underneath, sees one of the values, but the value is basically tie broken based on the base spec. So what we found that you need some kind of debugging, right? And for the debugging, we threw in a well-known key type, which has no other purpose but basically percolate down, and everybody can advertise it that at every place in the fabric you can go and look, was it properly tie broken? Did it choose the proper guy, right? So it's next one. It's a relatively simple thing. It basically has a system ID and level, because that's how we tie break. And with that, it's very helpful in the sense that you see whether the nodes are at the right level and whether the stuff percolated down. And you see whether the tie breaking was correct, because this thing runs on the same key, right? The soundbound tie break, well-known key. So everybody advertises the same key. At the bottom, you look, is the tie breaking correct? Did the correct guy win? And that's very helpful. I was thinking about whether we should do something where when the top of fabric is ringed, which is optional, right? But then we only see the northbounds ties. I don't know whether you follow me, and if not, read the spec. But at the top, multiplane is kind of compulsory. Otherwise, a lot of people like to ring the fabrics on top for resiliency purposes. But with Rift, you basically only got the other guy's northbound tie, so you don't see the southbound key values. So to check, to find split brains, we would have to reflect the southbound key values, just like we reflect the node ties. And it's possible, but just to debug the stuff, I think it's not the wise thing to put into the fabric, because then you basically start to reflect the stuff all the time. I mean, implementation may choose to do that and then basically debug the fabric that way. But it's not something I thought would be wise to put in the base spec, because, it's those key value stores. Once people find them, it's like a broadcast mechanism. They want to put their pony and everything with it, so they can grow in size. Yeah, next one. I think that's it. The rest was all auto. Yeah, so IANA registration. Yeah, we're waiting for the base spec now. It's rolling towards IANA, and then the key value will roll behind. So the base spec is kind of stable and done. And the auto EVPN was kind of stable, so that stuff works as advertised. And the flood reflector had some extension and values and so on, because we're frankly going now through the paces of actually, go and debug and deploy and see how the stuff works. And there's, once you start to talk to customers, they have all kind of interesting, epiphanies what they would like to have. So this kind of going through the paces right now. If people implement the stuff, if people play with this stuff, feedback always more than welcome. I think I'm at the end of my shtick, right? That's it. Actually, Jordan's shtick, so it's all Jordan's material. Questions, observations, rotten fruit?
So we had finished the working group last call some time ago, and it was waiting for Schaeffer's write-up, and that was done. But given the changes made recently, and also we maybe after the base spec is finally done, maybe we can do a quick working group last call again, and then proceed with this.
I mean, from my side, no one's in a rush, right? Yeah. The main thing now is to nail the base spec, because then we have a non-floating point, right, on which we can hook things up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll wait for the base spec finish first. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sandy.
Okay. Sandy is on IETF. I'd like to say if it's better to add some examples in the KV registry draft, because it may give some guidance for the users to how to use it to register the key value. Right?
Well, auto EVPN uses it. So here is a prime example, and the flood reflection also has reserved values. So you see what it's being used for, right?
Okay, so we can find the example in auto EVPN draft.
Right. Yeah, auto EVPN has a bunch of things reserved, but otherwise it's kind of like the deployment spec thing.
Okay.
Perfect. Put the key value example, and I think there is already key value consideration stuff like don't think this is Redis, right?
Okay.
Right. So watch your scale. This is not your database, but good material for the deployment draft, in my opinion, because none of the stuff is normative then, right?
So maybe Sandy said we can at least create references, just informative, and for people who read the draft, they would know where to look for.
I mean, I would not shackle the key value registry draft to any of this auto EVPN and auto flood reflection, because those are just uses of it, right? And the examples go in the deployment draft. So I don't think I would reference anything. I mean, if you really, really want, you can put an example, but you already have the example. It's the tie-breaking thing, right, that I put in for debugging purposes. That is actually now in the base in the base key value spec, because it's just a useful tool to debug. So that's why we took the count point.
Okay, I just check the draft. The auto UEP1 draft has been listed as informative reference. Yeah, that's okay.
Should be standards, sure. And now, Sandy, once you come to it, actually, I think I give you some work. I think it will be useful to add also a reserved key for the northbound. So even if you don't have a key value, you can say like originated. So at the top of the fabric, I can see whether the whole thing works correctly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an easy one. Oh,
let's 1 to 16, like MPRS. All right.
yeah.
The result is okay.
No, seriously. I mean, that's what we found, that you basically want to see whether it works as advertised, right? I mean, with the northbound, it's not necessary because you see whether you have a node ties of those guys coming up if you have it. Well, still, you don't know whether the key value store works, but it's kind of, you know, the stuff works. But the southbound, we had surprises, right? Because we had tie breaking bugs, and all of a sudden the wrong thing shows at the bottom of the fabric. So you don't know, does the guy send it or is it tie broken incorrectly? But I think it would be a good thing to have a reserved also for the northbound key values. So even if an implementation doesn't need any key values, you can still tell it like originate, so I see whether the key value works.
Okay.
Well,
I will think about it.
yeah, so if you want, write something, or otherwise, you know, I throw it in Jordan's plate. It's kind of trivial, you know. But again, from, you know, deploying, playing with the stuff in the lab, it was useful, right?
Okay.
Mm.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Any more questions? No? Okay, thanks.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Enjoy the 2,500 changes when you look at the spec. All right.
All right, thanks. Jeff, can you bring up that charter text again? So back in the IETF 114, we started some discussion on the new charter. And this time is basically to make it a bit more formal. I proposed some text on the new charter. On this page, I omitted a few paragraphs at the very beginning. I just highlighted the changes here. A very brief description on the finished work items. And the intention is to submit this after we're really done with those original milestones, and then we would submit this to IESG and to start a recharter process. So this is a quick list of the work we've done. Next slide, please. Oh, actually.
So Alberto Tanarelli, so just a quick comment. If you're going to submit the charter when the work is done, then you don't need to list the work in the charter.
Okay.
Right, because it's done.
Okay.
And I would say that you can probably there's the three things listed there, right? The Yang model is, I guess, going to be the last one to be processed. You don't have to wait for that one, right? I think the first two are the big ones, right? The applicability and the spec.
Okay.
So when those are with the IESG, I guess at that point you can probably submit the charter.
Yeah. Okay.
And try and get it approved.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so time-wise, probably sometime between San Francisco and Prague, right?
Tony?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't push on the button. Tony P. Juniper. So once the base spec is really nailed, right? I think the deployment is basically there. It can be always fluffed up. So the miscabling, that will be good to like put, you know, significant, you know, good amount of more stuff into the deployment drafts. And I mean, I can even talk about a couple of things, you know, we implemented that for us were useful as miscabling, which again, for other people may not be miscabling, right? It's really implementation dependent, deployment dependent. But then I think the Yang will need to, you know, still, you know, careful once more reading through, and I'll have it on my agenda, once the base spec came through, because then I know then I have a fixed point, right? Nothing moves anymore.
Okay, thank you. So this slide shows the work items that we will want to continue to work on. So as we talked about last time, we actually had adopted some items that before the new charter was put in. So that was based on the consensus at that time. So this is the first few items. Just to make sure that those items are really covered by the new charter. For example, Kiwi registry, segment routing support, and using the zero-touch provisioning mechanism to do the auto EVPN. And then there's some other new work items. For example, using the zero-touch provisioning mechanism to do ISS flood reflection topologies, and multicast support, and a leaf ring support. In last IETF, we actually have a very good long discussion on that topic. It's we believe that it's something that it's worth working on. And then the multicast support, we had individual drafts before. It's good to pick it up. In fact, there are some folks are talking about multicast in data centers, the new use case. Apparently, with the AI and machine learning application, the multicast is becoming more and more important in data centers. So this multicast support will get some kick in the to get it done, and that also requires the policy guided prefixes to do the multicast support, at least in the current proposal. Policy guided prefixes was in the initial RIFT protocol itself, and then it was spinned off into its own draft. We haven't looked at it for a while, and it's time to get it done now after the base spec is done. So these are the proposed items. Please take a look at them and to see if they make sense to you and if you're interested in contributing to the work. Tony?
Yeah, so I put myself in the queue this time again. So this is all absolutely correct. The policy guide prefixes are still in the schema, right? So the hooks are there. The thing can be easily revived, and the leaf ring supports. So before people got confused, so leaf rings work, right? But there is one optimization that could be done, and an optional way to do them that ZT suggested. So I think it's a very interesting discussion. But basically, if you run it today, you already get leaf ring support if you want it. Yeah.
Thanks.
So, Alberto Tanarani, the quick question, because I haven't read the drafts. Those items on zero-touch provisioning, or using zero-touch to provision something, are how do I use that mechanism to enable ISIS flooding reduction, right? I mean,
yeah, so that's a fair question. So these things basically derive enough information that you can use to provision ISIs, but they don't tell how you on the box can provision ISIs. So
right. So what I'm going to say is that, of course, provisioning ISIS is not part of the RIFT working group, right? It's part of LSR. I don't have a problem with the RIFT working group working on that. But what you probably want to do is not just put in the charter, you're going to go talk to LSR a lot about this, but get to an agreement with the LSR chairs beforehand, right? So they know that this work is going on, and so that when they get the draft for review, that there's no surprises and no one says anything weird. just so that there's coordination. Right?
But the work was presented in BEST and LSR.
Tony, Mike.
Yeah, just the formality of doing it.
So the work was presented in BEST and LSR. So I mean, we're not blindsiding them. So first, Alvaro's observation is absolutely correct that that's something that bears discussion. Those drafts basically say, look, if you run this thing, that's how you derive all the values that allow you to provision EVPN, right? Now, how you provision specifically on the box using those values, I think is completely out of scope, but it bears discussion, like what does it mean? And then, yes, I mean, of course, we should keep BEST and LSR on top of the stuff and carefully review because, I know the technologies, people know the technologies here, but those are, the masters of the universe and, new stuff is coming up all the time and they may have better ideas or we may have missed something massively, yeah. I'm decently confident because, the auto EVPN is actually implemented, works, deployable. And the flood reflection, well, I kind of cooked it up largely initially. So, I kind of have a hang of it, I think.
Sandy on ZTE. So all the items are all standard check items, right? If we should add some information items in it, such as deploy consideration or some other useful information for it.
So I have thought the application statement, applicability statement is more on that topic you're referring to, right?
Yeah, yes, maybe in the future there is some more deployment for it, and there is some more weird topology. So maybe it's just for future consideration. Yeah.
Okay, we can keep it that in mind, but my understanding was that for new extensions, new features, those corresponding specification itself will cover those kind of things. It's only for the base protocol specification, given that it's such a complicated one. So the applicability statement will help, but for new extensions, they could be self-sufficient. But we don't have to rule out anything. But I think I see what you mean. You're
Okay.
talking about now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I think we will update as we go, right? And I do expect new work to come up. As you've probably all seen, these days it's all about machine learning clusters. And there's no better protocol for this than Rift, believe it or not. And we are looking at massive deployments. Like, think about OpenAI that wants hundreds of thousands of endpoints on a single network. And routing is not always obvious. And it seems like Rift has many, many properties that no other protocol can. Again, I'm just talking about kind of looking at the crystal ball. I do expect new work coming from this area. And personally, I'd be really interested in doing so.
Thank you. So we should probably immediately reserve a key value for chat GPT support, whether we need it or not, right? Just so we get attention. No, seriously. So I think Sandy makes a fair point, right, with this auto VPN and the flood reflection. Yeah, there's a lot of consideration about deployment of this kind of stuff. I mean, this is not the magic wand, right? This has this, all this zero-touch stuff, especially on this EVP and precondition certain model and certain limitations and how you deploy it, blah, blah. There's a lot of consideration that we see. But it's a chicken and egg problem. People have to implement and go and play with it, right? Unless people go and implement and play with it, I mean, we do our shtick because we kind of push it forward, and if we don't we kind of know how it works. So the more people implement it, the more, if we start to interrupt, for example, auto EVP and stuff, maybe interesting stuff will happen. Same thing with the flood reflection, right? Or people start to deploy it and they want to deploy it in a different way. Or no, the perfect example is the EVPN model that we chose, right? It was just what, the feedback we got from our customers and the stuff that worked and that looked, like what people want. But we don't know, maybe there is people who want to push a completely different, EVPN model, with route reflection, eBGP, blah, 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 and so on. But unless people start to implement and push the stuff and play with it, I mean, there will be no much of considerations, right? So yeah, what's my feedback? Yeah, go hack it, interop, easily done, and then we go and play with the stuff. And then, yeah, deployment or applicability document makes sense, but just cooking one up because we cook one up, there will be nothing in it really.
Talking about implementation and interop, I think we were talking about potentially doing a interop testing at the November timeframe, hackathon, as part of hackathon.
Yeah, but I think we're always talking base spec, right?
Right.
I didn't see anybody. I mean, I had some discussion with people who wanted to start on auto EVPN on Bruno's stuff, but nothing happened as far as I know. Yeah. Okay. And I mean, I don't think I'll take up on myself to implement the stuff. It's simply no cycle for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very bound to VPN implementation, right? How you do bridging, and it's really complex to do. You need to understand how VPN is done on not particular system, and it's not.
Yeah, correct, right? Yes, and for example, if you look at the auto flood reflection, right, it already starts with which tunnel types do you choose, right? Flood reflection will run over anything, but you have to nail something. So maybe we need to put something more into the spec, where somehow we exchange what tunnel types those are. But then, flood reflection has automatic tunnel discovery. So maybe, we have to put something into the flood reflection. I don't know, this auto flood reflection that you should provision blah, blah, blah tunnel type, and then ISIS floods it and the tunnels discover. But, we did what worked for us, right? Until other people implement the stuff and we start to hook it up and see whether anything is going wrong, and it has to be more flexible and support other models. I mean, I don't have time to just do things for entertainment, frankly, right?
Okay. Again, this text here are just a proposal, initial version. So please review and comment on it, and we make changes before we submit it to officially. Yeah.
Alvaro, we would really appreciate your insights with regards to updated chapter, what it should be, what it should look like, so SG doesn't ask many questions.
Yeah. So Alvaro chartered this working group, and this is also my first time being a co-chair. Thank you for your guidance, and thank you for your thorough review for the base spec. We know how much effort you have put in and how much issues you have found. So really, really thank you. Thanks.
Thanks,
go ahead.
Very much appreciated. Absolutely.
Xusong from Huawei, sorry for stepping in. I just feel like because the intention of Rift is for routing protocol, I noticed that the proposed new chapter is quite, broad scope. So I think it's, we should be really specific in each point that, for example, the segment routing support, what we should do from the point of routing protocol extension. So I think that will be very helpful. And also the multicast support.
So initial drafts are out, and obviously we would appreciate working group review and comments on this. Please do so.
Sure. So what is the name just about the new chapter? Sorry, I'm not so familiar with the previous work.
Yeah, so we started work on, so most of the work you see here is already in progress, right? So there's initial drafts, and they clearly show how technology could be and would be implemented. So
you mean
we started
each
it actually
point?
before changing. Go ahead.
You mean for each point there is a corresponding document already
Correct.
there?
Yes.
Oh, each point.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I will try to find out and review the documents. Thank you. Thank you
Would
for
be
your
great. Thank you.
explanation. Yeah.
Thanks. So I think we're done for this one, for this session.
Yeah, I think so too. So,
Okay.
Alvaro, again, special thanks from chairs, from every participant in this group for your support, thoughtful reviews, and you've been an amazing AD. One cannot wish better AD than you. And probably we owe you dinner.
Thanks,
One
Jeff.
of the
Thanks,
things.
Jeffrey. And thanks everyone for doing the work, and I hope we all keep working more on this. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And hopefully we'll see you in San Francisco. Should be much easier to attend. Goodbye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye. Yeah, again, if they're coming from now or probably coming from six. Go ahead. Now you're looking for that. That's the So I think so in the trip we rely on we rely on the egress which always choose the same. And then No, no, ja w Krakowie jest Right, it could be like that, but there's also just using so the IP every all the languages, so you cannot really make it. So today you and in certain cases, also added the rules. Still, there is a chance that different people have sometimes and that could cause in that case it's the so they would then accepted how it's
thoughts were always in that side. How you work, how you convert it. What let's do then. I think I'll send you a list of current series which I put to send or which I'm sending. Even see that the board will know the series is coming. Please make sure if there are leaders who are announcing something. It's kind of a series. And maybe only from that how I have such situations.